All right. Hope everybody's well. Let me get my effects going on here. All right. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report. Let's see here. Yeah. Hoping everybody's good. I know many of you are probably coming over from BGS. Shout out to the good brother. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates use critical analysis to uplift Black men and boys. Hope everybody's doing good. Shout out to you, especially those that came through early. What's good, brother Malika? Got brother Mike in here. I'm listening. Got Pirate Broadcaster. Your Sugar-Coated Secrets. What's going on? Socioloza, I guess. Barry, what's good with Barry? Always supporting the show. Much appreciation to you. Big Discussions. What's going on, Doc? Hope you're well. We got Galen in here. Let's see here. Shout out to Ahmed. What's going on? On the clock at the Foundry, coming through early. Much appreciated for the support. Like, share, subscribe, join, donate, hit the hype button. Support the show so we can continue to bring you this independent Black male thought. You can see the different ways you can support. There's the Patreon, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. You can become a member on Patreon. And also you get kind of videos that are not allowed to be put on YouTube. You also get to participate in the film review, live film reviews we do on the 1st to 15th of every month. But if you go to the Institute for Black Male Studies, you can join that Patreon as well, get access to material that is not made public. So you can support either way, but please consider doing so. Got out to Joré in the house. Let's see. Queese, I think that is. Martin, what's going on? Shout out to Dark Power for the Cash App. Much appreciated. Got Cynical Optimist. What's happening? Let's see. We got Envy. Joré comes through with the support, the super sticker. Thank you very much. Let's see here. No News. What's happening? BGS in the house. Much appreciated. Thanks for coming through. Hit the like button if you will. The Watcher. What's going on? Let's see here. Discipline. What's happening, man? Willia? Or, I don't know how to pronounce that really. What's going on with you? Anyway, hoping everybody's good. I think we got a good one for you. Wanted to get some business out of the way, some house business real quick. Before we jump in, make sure that you are checking out the Institute for Black Male Studies merch page. The link is in the description box. And you can see some of the newest things that are on there, even from the last week. We got Under Armour bags, we got caps, we got quarter zips, hoodies, mugs, t-shirts, the whole deal. Everything is there. So if you remember, go to the menu button or just hit catalog and click date new to old so you can see all the newest stuff first. And you can go ahead and check out what's all in the merchandise pack. So go ahead and check that out and support so we can continue to thrive. All right. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to bring up the good brother, Dr. Ronald Neal, who is the inspiration behind this talk today. So I think we're going to have a little bit of fun. Shout out to Barry. Much appreciation for the support. Again, Passport OG in the house. What's good, Muada? We got Ed in here. So people are coming through. Let me see. W. Hawkins, what's going on? So we got 136 across all platforms. So please make sure you are hitting the like button as you come in and supporting if you can. Let me go ahead and bring the good brother up. What's happening with you, man?
Hey, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I had to get my brother back in here, man, because you always lighting fires, man. I said, I got to talk to this brother. I'm telling you, man, and it ain't just on YouTube. The brother is not playing, man. So I wanted to get you back up in here for this.
You're too kind, man. I appreciate everything that you do, brother.
Let me see. We got a shout out, Sir Lavo. He said Dr. Neal's show was amazing today. All right. Let's see here. Shout out to Ghetto User. What's going on? He said your response to the challenge was masterful and timely, Doc. Salute to you all. Salute to you for all you do and advocating for Black men. Much appreciated. Thank you. Somebody asked, what is his page? Go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, sir.
Find me at BMI 3000 Reloaded. BMI 3000 Reloaded right here on YouTube. BMI 3000 Reloaded. Yes,
there
sir.
You go. Yeah. So just to clarify where this conversation is coming from. Now, this has come up in the past, although I don't think I had as clear an idea about it as you do. Tommy might, because he wrote an incredible paper on something similar. So, but I was just bumping around LinkedIn, I want to say a couple weeks ago, and I ran into some comments that you left. Do you want to, take us through a little bit of that? Do you remember what I'm talking about in regard to Africa?
No.
Well, it was about Africana Studies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, Wellesley College, which is located in Massachusetts, which is primarily a private women's college. It's been around for a very, very long time. They were celebrating, I believe, maybe 50 years of Black studies.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one of the professors there. She's an assistant professor. She's an African woman. And I want you to note that. So she posted, it was a poster of all of the presenters that were going to be at this women's college celebrating, their history in terms of Black studies. And on the poster were a number of Black American women. So all of the presenters that they had invited were all Black women. And here's and let me give you some information on Wellesley College. So there was a scholar. He's deceased now. His name is Tony Martin.
Okay.
And Tony Martin was a Garvey scholar. And he spent his career writing about Marcus Garvey and everything like that. And so he was a part of the generation that, was a part of the inception of Black studies from the 70s going into the 80s and everything like that. But at any rate, I saw this post and I found it interesting, and I was like, wow, you all are having this celebration of, all these decades of Black studies, and all of the invitees are women, right? And when you go to Wellesley, so when you go to their website and everything like that, their current faculty consists primarily of women. There are 3 women who are from the diaspora. All of them, have roots somewhere in the diaspora. They're not discernibly Black American. And they have some emeritus professors, and I, given the emeritus status, these are people who are retired now. And one of the emeritus professors is a Black man, and then they had 2 other Black women who were also emeritus professors and what have you. And I looked at it, and I looked at the presenters, and I said, this is not Black studies. I said on the post, I said, this is women's studies.
Okay.
And the reason why I said that is because, you're having people coming to the institution whose orientation is primarily, feminist.
Okay.
If they're not feminist, they're womanist and what have. They have a whole bunch of courses. Huh?
Your mic sounded like you went in and out for a quick second, but you're back.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a whole litany of courses, that deal with African American content, history, politics, or what have you. You know what I'm saying? And they have 3 working faculty, and I looked at all the profiles of their faculty, and all of them have a feminist orientation, some type of womanist orientation, or what have you. And I'm like, this is women's studies. Yeah. This is Black women's studies. This is not Black studies. If you were serious about Black studies, you would have invited more than just Black American women. On the poster, and I took the poster, I screenshotted it, I put it on my LinkedIn page and everything like that, and I made comments on it. And basically what I said is that, these women have basically, and I'm saying this now, this is the first time I'm saying this in public, they have gerrymandered Black studies.
Yeah.
Okay. Another term that you can use is that they have gentrified Black studies. So they've turned Black studies into women's studies. And
I've actually framed it as a coup over in the past, but I've seen that as well. Yeah. Because there's an incredible diversity of thought in the field itself, from Black Marxism to conservatism to feminism to, I mean, you name it. There's so much diversity, but when you start talking about gender, it's almost a religious priority at this point, impulse or whatnot. Matter of fact, if you find a Black woman in Africana studies that doesn't have something overtly Black feminist in her makeup as far as her CV or research interests, it's actually surprising.
No, absolutely. And what is more is that if you go to different universities, Northwestern, if you go to Columbia, NYU, or what have you, you're going to find that overwhelmingly the faculty is female. And when they do have Black male faculties, they have the queer guys and stuff like that.
Right.
You might have one guy, and you don't know what his orientation is. He may be straight, okay? And I will say that he might. There could be one heterosexual on the faculty where you have 10 people, and the vast majority of the faculty people are females. You understand?
It's interesting because when you raise that at a women's college, you'll have some people that'll say, well, it's a women's college. But I will say historically, that's not always been the case. There've always been male professors at various institutions, but in alignment with what you're talking about, and I'm gonna let you continue. I just want to show you this while you talk. Yeah. This is a Facebook post I put up a couple years ago, or a year ago, right? Or last year, I should say, in September. This is African American and African Studies at Michigan State, right? And so I just want you to take a look at the faculty.
Yeah.
That's the entire faculty, right?
Yeah.
So as I posted it, I said, so what kind of graduate program in African American and African Studies at Michigan State does an all Black feminist faculty create? And the documentations reads, the graduate program in AAAS offers exclusive advanced study in Black feminisms, gender, and sexuality studies. The graduate program has 3 concentrations of study: Black cultures and institutions, Black girlhood studies, and Black speculative ecologies. But this is it. This is where it's coming from. And the reason I pose this is not because I have any particular gripe with Michigan State, but because I think this is reflective of what we've been seeing in the field. But I want you to continue. I just wanted to corroborate a little bit about what you're saying, but go ahead.
Yeah, and what happens is that they're using to use ADO's nomenclature and the nomenclature that you use in your own work. They've used a flat Blackness. So these departments are framed under the umbrella of flat Blackness. It's Black. It's Black studies. The departments are called Black Studies departments. Okay. And so, when Black studies emerged in the late 60s and the early 70s, the focus was on the Black American condition. That was the beginning thing. You understand? And it was inclusive of it was men and women. Okay. The feminists later on, would attack the idea of blackness and say it wasn't robust enough and that it didn't cover the category of female or what have you. But fast forward, the departments, the nomenclature didn't change. But what happened is that the composition of the faculties have dramatically shifted, and the orientation of the scholars. So all you have to do is look at their CVs, look at their publications, and that tells you everything. So once you zero in on the CVs and you see, okay, this person is feminist this, feminist that, woman is this, woman is that, gender this, gender that, or what have you, you know what's going on right there. So what happens is that they are doing feminist stuff under the umbrella of Black studies.
Right.
You understand? So what that means is that when students are coming into those courses, and you can be taking, I was looking at Wellesley again, and they had stuff on Reconstruction or whatever, and Jim Crow oriented stuff, the past, and it's like, okay, whoever teaches this course is going to, because of their orientation, deal with it from a feminist standpoint and starting point. And if you're doing it from a feminist starting point, that indicts you. You are not dealing with Black people in their totality. The feminist framework it's a very narrow, it's a very myopic framework. And the reality is that we're in a moment right now where you have a lot of revisionist stuff that's happening under feminism.
Yeah.
These people are trying to revise how we understand Black history, Black politics, and all this kind of stuff, and minimizing the presence and impact of Black men in their history. So, like, if I mentioned Marcus Garvey, so if they were to cover Marcus Garvey from a feminist standpoint, they're going to be talking about his wife and all that kind of stuff, and they're going to be talking about his wives rather, or talking about the so-called gendered dimensions of this history, what have you. And when you do that, there's a lot that gets lost, that gets erased. It's a because feminism is a very, in terms of its orientation, it deals darn near exclusively with all these micro issues, these micro interactions between men and women. And what happens is that the macro, the larger stuff in terms of structures, institutions, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I also consider it kind of an ideological colonization of the field. We're just not used to applying the term colonization to another group of Black folk, but that's precisely what's happening. And it's been financed, it's been subsidized by white elites, most particularly on the left, and white feminists to be particular, right? They've invested in this. They've helped to, just kind of completely allow for this takeover of a field. And you can see it in so many different ways. I mean, shout out to Christopher. He points out, and he corrected himself and said this took place in March, but he's talking about I think he's talking about NCBS. But the 50th National Black Studies Conference just convened in Baltimore. He said women, queer, trans, and bi studies seem to be the main presenters. That's been taking place for a good long time. I'm going to show you what I mean by that in a minute. But you're dead on, man. This is definitely a takeover. And the other thing I was going to say, when you hear gender and gender studies and sexuality studies, it's synonymous with women and LGBT. It's almost exclusively such, and it has alienated many straight Black men from participating. But more so, it's also alienated materials produced by straight Black men. So it's an all-out assault on multiple levels. The bodies in the room, as well as the ideologies and the ideas discussed. And so that kind of takeover is what we're witnessing.
Absolutely. And what I said in one of my posts, I said, this is not academic. This is not academic. This is a cult. We're dealing with a cult, a cult of
very much
a cult of Black womanhood that is subsidized by these institutions and subsidized by foundations, so on and so forth, and what have you. And I'm going to say that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they do.
This is a very deliberate thing on their part. In terms of diminishing, minimizing, and undermining the role of Black men in history and Black men in the present as well.
Yes.
You understand? And so so that's what is going on. And so I told you I was commenting. It was a women's school, and I had a white woman. Here's the thing: a white woman commented.
I saw
she
that.
Said, "Well, yeah." A white woman responded to what I said, and she was like, "Oh, what do you know about Wellesley College? And do you know our curriculum? And blah 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 blah. And how do you know what's going on and what have you?" And this is the women's college. And I said, listen, I said that doesn't matter. I said, we are a population of over 40 million. You understand? And it's not just women; it's men.
Yes.
And if you deal with Black, if you deal with the notion of Black, the construct of Black, and that's what it in the 70s and 80s, that's what it was. It was women and men. You understand? And here's the other thing. So, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to go too far with this, but it's in my institution as well.
Oh yeah.
And the hires, and that's what it boils down to. So when they hire people, the preference is made for the female scholar. You understand?
Oh, we definitely going to get into that, man, because there's too much to bring to bear on it. But I did want to quickly shout out Augustus and his wife for the support on the Cash App. But Smooth Prof dropped something I think that's important to this conversation. It's Smooth Prof writes, how much of this feminization is a function of the high numbers of Black women in the academy over against ideological commitments to feminism? Part of, when you actually listen to what Helen Andrews talks about when she talks about feminization, one aspect of it is not only do the bodies in the room begin to change, but once you get more women congregating in the space, they begin, and I think this is endemic of most groups in terms of how socialization works, they begin to alienate anyone that isn't them. We just didn't expect that in a Black context because historically we have been excluded to such a great degree that, at least in theory, we operated in lockstep as men and women. But seeing Black women take over a space that was predominantly Black and then begin to edge Black men out is something that most don't know how to talk about. Most Black men don't know how to talk about it. Most Black men in the academy won't say a word about it. I mean, mainly because the majority of the people they work with, in the Black section of the academy are Black women. So, there's a lot of silence.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of men that'll tap me on the shoulder under the table and say, hey man, thank you for saying that.
And that's why I said that it's a cult, it's not academic. Because the sensibilities are not academic sensibilities. And what I mean by academic sensibilities is that, if you have a program of censorship, if you have a coercive thing or a compulsory thing, where it is demanded that you conform, and that you raise no questions, that you go along with the program, and you just sit up and dribble.
Right.
That's not academic, bro. That's something else. It's a cult. You understand? And the reality is that unfortunately, the white liberal establishment benefits. It upholds this stuff because it benefits its own imperatives in terms of, you know, trying to be virtuous and trying to seem chivalrous and just and all that kind of stuff. And it's aligned to their, you know, their narrow idea of what justice is. And it's also racist. It's also racist. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It is deeply racist. Because you can't study an entire population of human beings by focusing on one population, one gender. You understand? And that's the thing. You know, and I will say this. We talk about this, and I have no qualms in saying that that this is not. And like I said in the post, I said this is not Black studies. This is women's studies, or this is Black women's studies, and what have you, which is masquerading under the auspices of Black studies. You know, and what's interesting about it is that they get to double dip, right? So what happens is that some of these departments, they have connections to the other, you know, women's studies departments or women and gender studies and stuff like that. And these faculties are like, they're moving forth. So they get to function in Black studies, and they get to function in, you know, women's studies, or what is controlled primarily by white women. You know what I mean? White women imperatives and stuff like that, and LGBT imperatives. You understand? Right. So, and what happens is that, we are completely alienated, you know, from that whole process, you know, which involves basically, at the end of the day, it's about the production of knowledge, the production of ideas, in everything. And you're saying that Black men have nothing to contribute to the production of knowledge.
Well, there are people that believe that there's nothing new that Black men have to offer, or there's not even anything new Black men need to be reflected upon about since 1994. As I heard one woman scholar say at a conference, she said, you know, after Boys in the Hood and what was, you know, the discussions going on at that time, if you want to talk about Black men, you don't need to go past 1994. And this was stated at a Black Studies conference. So this is the outlook that I think some people have, and I think it's part and parcel to the feminist outlook that there's nothing new in regard to Black males. I mean, I think as far as we're concerned, if you talk about incarceration, drug sales, violence, intimate partner violence, as you know right now, Black men are being rebranded as far as that's concerned with some of the current events. And then, of course, if you talk about street level violence, as long as you cover those, you know, those four areas, you pretty much covered anything that has to do with Black men in the minds of a lot of people. And many of those people are academics in Africana studies, particularly with this feminist orientation. This idea is there's nothing new to talk about. But the issue when we start to really get into Black feminization is that it's not just ideological in a field. It almost like a cancer, it begins to move out in a variety of different areas. It moves out into whether you're talking about the administration, whether you're talking about the people who actually get jobs and the hiring committees itself. I have had several brothers reach out to me over the last decade and tell me stories about sitting on hiring committees where they're supposed to hire a new Africana Studies faculty person. And the women running it, who usually predominate in numbers, not only in the department or the program, but also on the hiring committee. And they'll turn around and say in the first meeting, we are hiring a Black woman. Now, to anyone that doesn't know, that's illegal. You really can't do that.
Yeah, it is illegal. And and these programs, and it's an issue with, you know, higher education. For those who are listening, you know, the current administration has cracked down on universities and colleges across the board because of that problem. Because the reality is there has been a lot of illegal stuff that's been going on and everything in terms of preferential hiring. And they've gotten away with that for decades, up until this recent moment. And And I mean, and that was part of the logic of getting rid of quote unquote DEI. You understand? Because in these type of institutions, it was clear that there was certain populations that were targeted for employment.
Right.
And in general, men were not the targets, especially black men. Black men who were seemingly heterosexual, not the targets. It's mainly the primary targets have been white women, so-called women of color, and LGBTQ people, particularly LGBTQ men. And so the administration in this crackdown, pushing institutions like Harvard and Columbia and other places to tighten up, and really, Trump is taking funding. He's taking federal funding from these institutions,
right?
Because of that, and mostly, state universities have been, the high Ivy League institutions have been impacted by it. But in addition to them, the state universities have also been impacted. So, in my part of the country in the South, state legislatures, they have been defunding a lot of these endeavors.
Right.
They've been defunding gender studies program. They've completely, like in Florida, Ron DeSantis has completely dismantled gender studies programs in the state Florida, University of Florida system and what have you. I mean, it's gotten so, intense and interesting that sociology, they have dismantled sociology in the state Florida system, in terms of it being an introductory course to freshmen and what have you, because sociology was seen as being a discriminatory enterprise in terms of how they were approaching sociology, race, class, gender, sexuality, and stuff like that. And they said, okay, you all are pushing the ideology. This is activism. Right. And the state is not going to fund activism. Yeah, so that's those are the broader kind of issues that are going on. The private schools are different because, private schools are kind of protected because they have endowments and stuff like that. And you have private schools that are not on the radar of the administration in the way that the super selective schools, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Brown are.
Yeah. And I should say there's multiple kind of coups taking place. I mean, this is not going to be the focus of today's show, or at least from my vantage point, but I have seen and been in spaces where, what we would call ADOS FBA in Africana studies in certain spaces are barely present. I've seen that taking place as well. So you end up in a space where there were multiple almost Cold Wars happening at the same time. And if you're a student coming through this and you haven't learned the sides yet, you just, you see people taking these shots at each other under the table, but you don't understand what's going on, what the legacy of that is. And all you know is that there have been people who have stepped in the wrong space and found themselves as grad students completely eliminated from their programs, and you still don't understand what the hell happened. So we're going to talk about one dimension of that and how it plays out. Now, I want to say that not only are we seeing this kind of takeover as it influences, the ideology, the academic bodies that are hired, we're also seeing it in the speech. And I want to say that because in the last few days, I've been seeing a lot of the attempts to brand Black men as a whole in regard to some of the incidents in the news, and certain types of speech are being attacked outright. And I consider this colonization by proxy, because again, Black women are not doing this out of nowhere. They're doing this as subsidized by, the white left and particularly feminists. But I also want to show you, this is if you're in any field of study as an academic, there is, a conference and an organization. And that, those organizations are the centerpiece of the field. And in Africana Studies, you got the National Council for Black Studies, and I believe ASALA. Would you consider ASALA?
Uh-huh.
I haven't been to ASALA. My mentor was president of National Council of Black Studies in the early 90s. So I started going to that. ASALA happens in the fall. The meeting happens in the fall at the conference. And I never have my semester together. As soon as I get my footing together, the conference is happening and I'm never ready. So NCBS happens.
Let me interject. So I was at ASALA in September.
Okay.
And I did a presentation there. And so, and this goes to what we're talking about. So I was a part of a session where there were 8 presenters.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only male presenter.
Yeah.
In the session.
Yeah.
Okay. The person who was supposed to preside over the session was a Black man. He didn't show up for whatever reason. I don't know why he didn't show up. And people start freaking out. So how are we going to do this? Because we don't have someone to preside. And guess who stepped up to preside over the session? Yours truly. Okay. And so I wind up presiding over the session. I was scheduled to be like the 5th presenter. And what I did was I just moved my presentation to the end. So I was the last person to present. But all of the presenters, and there was one white woman there, but all of the presenters were women.
Yeah.
And the overall ASALA program, and I have the program with me. You look over the program, it was a gynocentric, female-centric program. Darn near every other session was dominated by these Black American women academics, or and then other women from different parts of the country and Caribbean and whatever, different countries, that sort of thing. And when you went there, and the current president is a woman, and it was just dominated by women.
You know what? But even when I've seen, and you're right, because NCBS, last I checked, had a female president now too. But even when it hasn't, right? Even when there have been male presidents, it reminds me of a church, because one of the things you start to see is the swelling of the population becoming more and more female. So even if you have male leadership, they're catering to their base, who is the predominant number of the folks that are there, and then eventually the leading council and the presidency end up getting taken over. But even before that happens, you see it, because this picture here, now I took this in March of 2017. Now there were a couple of conferences prior to this where I did the same thing. And what I started to do, because it's, when you're going for tenure, it's expected that you go to conferences, you participate in your field, and that you present papers. So I went in 2017 to National Council of Black Studies conference. It was in Houston, Texas. And I'm there, and what I noticed, I'm gonna read what I wrote then. I said, at the NCBS conference in Houston, Texas, I'm at a session for supporting Black males. Only one of the 4 researchers came to present, the only Black male, and meaning that some of the other researchers weren't necessarily Black males, but none of them came except the one Black male. And they're trying to grapple with what to do for Black males. Here's one of the problems. We're in a space where the scholars are developing theories and research to better conceptualize the problems we face. But after counting the lectures, there are only 2 sessions on Black males and only 11 papers. On Black women and girls, there are 15 sessions and 60 papers. How do you solve problems when too many are unwilling to address Black males directly? Now, before leading up to this, I would go to a conference, I would take the program, and I would literally count how many sessions were dealing with gender as it related to men, or Black males and Black females. And I would write it down. And every conference, I would see it grow and grow and grow. I went to one more, I want to say, after this, and it was more than this was. It was the same thing. The last I checked, a good partner of mine a few days ago was telling me the last NCBS conference he went to, he said there was virtually no men there. Been taken over entirely. And nobody says anything about this. If you bring it up, it's considered not only uncouth, but misogynistic. So nobody says anything. What it is, the men just vote with their feet. They just stop going. But nobody says anything.
Yeah, they vote with their feet, and the women are not even concerned about it. It's not even.
Not at all.
It's not even a problem. It doesn't reflect for them a deep institutional issue. It doesn't present themselves. It doesn't present itself as a reflection of a larger crisis in terms of what's going on in the broader society, institutionally. Why is it that so few men are there? What's going on in the pipelines with the PhDs and you know at the master's level and all that kind of stuff, even going down to the undergraduate level? I mean, it says a whole lot about that. You know, so many efforts are made to elevate the women through these pipelines, and it is clear that you know the same type of energy is not directed towards Black men, and there is a deliberate effort. There's a you know to drive them out. There's real hostility that's there, and what have you. And yeah, and guys like, you know what? I mean, I have the potential or the talent to do this academic stuff, but you know, it just seems I have to negotiate all this, you know, all this politics, this gender politics and all that kind of stuff. And it's discouraging. It's like, why, you know, expend a whole bunch of time doing that? I can just go into a different direction and what have you. And on top of that, you know, I do think that they think that they're fair. I do think that they think that this is just something that's natural, that this is not socially engineered. You understand? I do think that they have a high level of innocence in terms of how they see themselves. You understand? And don't see themselves as being part of a system that's complicit in ensuring that only they are the voices in producing knowledge and everything like that. You understand? And so that's why right now someone needs to say anything. That's why I did it on LinkedIn. I said what I said because this is a real thing. Because it's like, again, we are over 40 million in terms of our population, and Black studies was supposed to, you know, bring clarity to the Black situation and what have you. And I'm like, you're not going to do that under this current paradigm. It's just not going to happen. You understand? And this is a real problem. And some of us, you know, who are in a position to do so, you know, are going to have to speak about this, you know, as we're doing now.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's, I gotta say, you really, I mean, it blew me out of my chair when I read it, because I was moving in that direction, but I hadn't stated it aloud to myself to the extent that you did. You just came out and said, you know, Africana studies no longer exists. Black women's studies is what we have now. And I've been fighting this, I've been debating it, I've been arguing it, I've been dancing around it. But kind of like with Helen Andrews and feminization, I hadn't come to the full realization of it. So when you said it, it knocked me out of my chair. And I this part I haven't told you. I talked to a number of brothers who are faculty in the field across the country.
Yeah.
And I said, I just shared the quote. Now these are trusted, you know, cats. I'm not saying we agree on everything, but I'm like, you know, my brother Ronald said something that I want to throw at you and get your response. So I told him. And they were like, God damn, he's completely right.
Yeah.
But it took a minute. The same way it did for me, it happened to them. You could hear them. You could almost hear them thinking through it once they heard the words. And it was like, and their response was the same. God damn. Yeah. Because it's not a surprise for them to say that the majority, you know, in the field are women, or that their programs are predominated by women. None of that is shocking. But to realize that the needle has moved on the very definition of the field based on the number of people in the room that are bringing in this feminist ideology and reframing the field itself, that's the part that few of us have been willing to actually say out loud.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And I did it on 2 posts. It does not. Black studies does not exist, and I will say aloud and emphatically, it in the United States of America, Black studies is non-existent. What was understood as Black studies, or you can go further, Africana studies, or what have you, however you want to frame it, is presently women's studies. Okay, women's studies, Black women's studies. It's about the study of women. It's about women's orientation, their perspective, their ideas, how they approach things and what have you. Anthropologically, and this is the word I use, anthropologically. I said that this whole field has an anthropological problem. And that is, it has been reduced to one gender. That's the problem.
Yes. Check this out. So you got Christopher dropping a word. He said, I noticed the clannish behavior of these women academics at this conference. It's very cliquish and self-absorbed. They are loud, flamboyant, and bombastic. And I have seen them gang up on a man that uses the wrong term or something they don't agree with. I've seen them do this in person at these conferences, while at the same time, now I didn't take a picture of the other rooms, but you see where the black male subject matter, this is how I've often seen it presented at conferences. When you go right across the hallway to any of the female focused subject matter presentations, the rooms are packed. As a matter of fact, this is a small room at a conference. Mm-hmm. The larger rooms can have anywhere from 300 to over 1,000 people, and it'll be packed to the gills. And they're talking about everything from drumming to politics, dancing to organizing spiritual communities and activism. But in all of those conversations, there's an underlying contempt and a desire to remove any referencing of Black males. And it's so silent, and it's so that unless somebody says it out loud, you just kind of feel it, but nobody acknowledges it. Nobody.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you where else it goes. Go ahead and finish your point. And I'll show you where else. I'll show you where else.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I saw it at a sala, and just as recently as September 2025, I saw it there. And all these presenters, and they're dealing with Black women activists and Black women artists and all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And one of the biggest panel sessions they had, one of the featured speakers was Sharice Burden. I think her name is Stella. She's out of Wayne State University and everything. She does stuff on the Black radical tradition and what have you. And there was some Black men on the panel with her, but she sucked up all the air of the room. And there was another woman that was also there. And it was basically centered on these figures and what have you, and again, you going through the whole conference was, the whole thing was that way. It was just a Black woman's convention.
Exactly.
Men were there.
Yes.
Yeah, men were there. There were men there, of course, you understand. But the tone, the focus, everything, was Black women oriented, and I will be fair to them, because I went in there, prepared if I had to do battle, possibly, what I mean? I prepared, that's okay. I might be walking in a hostile territory. I said that to myself beforehand. I'm going to get ready, to be the pugilist, you know what I mean? To their credit, it wasn't a whole bunch of, I didn't deal with a lot of confrontational stuff while I was there. Folks were very, cordial and what have you. But the fact remained that it was a woman's convention.
Well, I've seen it handled in two ways. I've seen it where you're directly confronted, and it's rarely one-on-one. It's usually the room versus you. But the other way I've seen it is a kind of benign neglect. It's kind of, we clearly don't like what Dr. Neal is saying, so we're just going to be quiet. Yeah. We're going to let him drop his pebble into the ocean, and then we're going to move on to subjects we appreciate. that we focus on. I've seen those two different approaches taken, where you're just sitting there and you've dropped everything you had to drop, and everybody just kind of looks at you blankly, and then they move on to the next session. But I wanted to share a couple of things that I've also seen happen as well. Now, I'll say this first before I bring this up. One area where I've seen this taking place, and I've shared this with people on my show since 2018. I have sat on so many PhD committees I've lost track, and most of them are young men that I've never met before in person. They've reached out to me from institutions I've never been to. And I mean, it's not abnormal to sit on a committee, as a professor, but I'm telling you, it's been such a regular thing, because what's happened is these men have found themselves completely alienated as graduate students in their programs. And some of them on the verge of being kicked out simply because they want to focus their research on Black males. And I mean, from toddlers to senior citizens. And the subject matter alone is treated like dynamite. It's treated like they've already violated a boundary that nobody's called a boundary. They're treated like they're a problem simply because they've said they wanted to study men. And this is by male and female professors. Even some of the male ones, the highly feminist ones, or they'll be the first ones to treat them like a problem simply because their research interest is in Black males. They haven't even claimed an ideological approach yet. I've had a young man, for example, who was studying 3 to 5-year-old Black males. His department treated him like he was a pariah because he didn't focus on girls, he focused on boys. From there, the problem became nobody would support him and sit on his committee. When he was finally able to get a committee, it was comprised of feminists, and there was usually a Black feminist woman who presided over the committee, asked to come on and provide kind of an ideological umbrella to reinforce that there are alternative perspectives. But this comes with risk. You know this deal. When you're a graduate student, you're trying to graduate, but you're also trying to get a job. And much of the time, your committee is supposed to be helpful in terms of pushing you on to the next level, helping you, writing letters on your behalf, helping you find a home as a job or whatever afterwards. And it's an uphill battle for a lot of these guys. I've seen some of them kicked out of their programs. I've seen them ignored to the point where they were starved out of their programs, if I can use that term. And I've also seen it to where if they decided to cite information from myself, from Dr. Tom Curry, and from other select brothers, they're automatically ostracized, but they don't even know it, because nobody comes up to you and says, you are now ostracized, you have to leave, we don't like you. That's not how it goes. It's very feminine. It's just like girls on the playground in elementary school. It's everybody just stops talking to you. And behind your back, behind your back, there's reputational damage. You are now spoiled goods in spaces you haven't even been to yet as a graduate student, simply because you wanted to study males, and you may have cited from somebody they didn't like. But go ahead.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a cult. It's not academic. It's a cult. And it reflects this anthropological problem. But what I want to say is that what has happened is that this gerrymandering or gentrification of Black studies is basically they're mimicking what the university was before Black studies existed. Okay, and so the complaint was, before Black people were in these institutions, everything was white male dominated. Okay. And, there were Black people who had to earn, we have Black people who earned PhDs before affirmative action. Martin Luther King Jr., he did his PhD at Boston University, and he didn't write on anything Black. Okay. And you can look at a whole bunch of people. Thomas Sowell, he was at Harvard. In the late 50s and what have you. There's so many Blacks who did that. I will give you another one. Janetta B. Cole. I remember, who was a former president of Spelman College. Diana Wolf, feminist and stuff like that.
I remember her.
She was trained in anthropology, and all of her professors were white men. And she was interested in Africa. So if you studied she came from that generation, and this is like, as Africa was on the cusp of independence, most of the books that were written on Africa were written by white people. Okay, so if you wanted to learn about Africa, you had to. She studied with Melvin Herskovitz. You understand, the famous anthropologist. You understand, and so you're a Black person studying Africa, and all of your professors are white males. Okay, and the white males are the experts on Africa. You understand what I'm saying? And so the thing is that they have reduplicated the problem, the very problem that they, at least in their minds, were trying to overcome prior to affirmative action, in the 60s and the 70s and all that kind of stuff. Oh, this is just a white male enterprise. Okay, the white males are no longer there. The Black males are no longer there. Now you're doing the same thing that the white males did prior to 1970. You understand? And the Black and so the Black men who are trying to contend this, they're minorities, because we are a numerical minority in these arenas. We are a minority in terms of power, influence, and all that kind of stuff. And and we're dealing with these similar dynamics. And these people refuse to see how they are participating in these power games and all of that, because it's all about it comes down to power, and it comes down to them having turf and making this our turf and gatekeeping and making sure that certain questions aren't raised, making sure that certain projects are not pursued. A lot of policing, surveillance, intellectual surveillance, censorship, and all of that. They're doing the same things that whites did in the 50s and before that, when Blacks went to white schools.
Yeah. And we're seeing it. Matter of fact, that's a good point to transition on. Let me show you a couple things. Now, let me just take this. Oh, my bad. Still a little rusty. So there we go. All right. So there's two things here I wanted you to see. All right. So the first one on the right, I'll start with that. This is a post. This is a comment that was sent to me a while back in response to something I said on a show. And the gentleman says, your story about grad school, debating your elders and being told you're the monster white people said you were, really resonated with me. I went through the same exact thing as a young scholar in my Africana Studies department in undergrad and grad school. Until you said it tonight, I never realized that was the context of my experience. Everything makes sense now. Scholarships stolen and given to my lower performing female classmates, betrayals, constant tearing down in and outside the classroom, chair track sabotage, department now has Black female chair, being told I lack commitment because I opted to finish my degree from home because I had to take care of he was a full-time caretaker to a blind mother, publications and partnerships with male mentors sabotage, the list goes on and on. I feel like a burden has been lifted off me after hearing your experience. Thank you. Now that's one thing. But while I'm reading that, I'm also remembering numerous stories about men who are actually hired already as professors and going through the same thing. I had one brother reach out to me about a year and a half ago from his university, and he's still filing a lawsuit as far as I believe. So he asked me not to name the university, but it's one that I'm very familiar with. And he was explaining to me that they were researching how Black men over the last few decades in Africana Studies, in that particular department, were being passed over for tenure by lesser published, lesser known, lesser accomplished Black women scholars. So not only were they being hired at a slower and lower clip, but even getting tenure and reaching the higher echelons of the field, they're being replaced. So when he talks about scholarships and whatnot, this is something that Black men are experiencing in wider numbers, but we had not had a conversation with one another about this. So most of us take this as something that's just happening to us. You know, why did, you know, so the scholarship was pulled from me and given to her. She was hired for the position, and they explicitly said they're not hiring any men. And this is a room full of Black women making these decisions. These are the kinds of things that on a micro level, men are experiencing and not sharing, but it's starting to slowly move toward organization and even lawsuits. But it is slow going, because I think most of us have to go through the process of realizing that this is not just happenstance. It's actually far more coordinated than we thought. Now, the video on the left represents something entirely different. One of the things I found after 3 degrees in Africana Studies was that there were whole areas in terms, especially even in the history, that we're supposed to think about in a certain way. So most of the time, for example, when I ask my students about the Underground Railroad, the first thing they say is, oh goodness, damn it, now I'm blanking on it. It just had it in my head, but I went a different way. What's the
Underground
system?
Railroad?
The shit.
Harriet Tubman?
Thank you. God damn it, man. I need a nap. I'm getting old. Harriet Tubman. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Now, I'm going to play this little clip real quick, but I will say this is not what I experienced directly on the subject of the Underground Railroad, but I want to get you acquainted to what I'm making a point about. So let's hear what this brother has to say. Okay, wait a minute. Can you guys hear that? Were you able to hear that at all? Okay. I think I know what. All right, so let me back it up a little. I think I might have gotten the sound together. Now let's try it. That still doesn't sound right. Okay. That's actually as loud as it gets. All right. Everybody's saying no audio. That's really strange. Let me make sure I got it on the right setting. Try and move it one more time. Strangely enough, it's opened up too. So let's try again. Can you hear that at all?
I heard a little bit of it.
Damn it, it's doing too much. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I do think I can find it in another way. I'm gonna have to go a little old school with it. I hate doing it this way because it's everything's so disorganized now. Oh man, what the hell is going on? Here we go. And that, of course, would be the one that's slow. I swear it's like gremlins. It's something going on with my system. As soon as I want to touch on something, it just acts crazy. Oh man.
So let me say this while you're working on that. I don't know if you're familiar with the economist named Roland Fryer.
Not right off.
Yeah. So Roland Fryer, he's an economist. He's from my generation, and he became very, very popular maybe 10, 15 years ago. He did a lot of research on, he's from Florida, as a matter of fact, and on police brutality and everything, and trying to understand what was happening with police brutality and the interactions that Black men were having with the police and everything. But at any rate, he was at Harvard, and you know, this guy, he rose to the top of the ranks, and he had his own center, lots of funding. Man, this guy was making like $600,000 a year. Okay. But he had, and his, you know, some people call him a conservative, whatever. I don't quite see it that way. I mean, he come from the bottom, man. He come from the very bottom. Okay. But at any rate, the people at Harvard didn't like him. You know, in African American studies and what have you. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of tension between him and, you know, what was the name? The former president of Harvard, the woman, Claudine Gay. You know, she was a dean at that particular time, and he tells the story her trying to undermine his career. You know what I mean? And what it really came down to is that Black men come with different perspectives, and those perspectives are threatening, to these folks. You understand what I'm saying? And he represents, kind of some of the problem, the challenges that we have now with Black male studies, because as you already know, I mean, people are already talking about us and what we're doing and everything like that. I just saw a post by Feminization Jones where she was saying, Black male studies, is gaining, some traction right now and what have you. And she called us a Black version of the red pill, and she called it Afro red pill. You know what I mean? And this is very recent in light of the stuff that's happening now with all these unalivings and everything like that. And she took exception to Black men pushing back against the monstrous narratives that are going on right now. You know what I mean?
For years, and this has happened cyclically, the things that are going on in the news right now has been going on for years, and most of the time Black men just shut up and didn't say anything. So so it's been recently that I've seen Black men standing up and speaking for themselves in ways that I didn't think I would see in my lifetime, and it is unnerving. A number of these women who've grown used to silent Black men taking their critiques on the chin and walking away slowly, and that's starting to change. But let me see. Tell me if you can see this. Hold on.
The biggest secret weapon.
Could you hear that?
Okay, I heard that. I heard it.
Okay, so this is again, I didn't have this experience with the Underground Railroad, but I'm going to share with you what this comes from. This is only a minute or so, few seconds longer. Check this out.
The biggest secret weapon behind the Underground Railroad was not Harriet Tubman, and it wasn't white people operating safe houses. It were Black men, actually. These men were sailors, they were ship captains, they were ferry operators. Most people who traveled the Underground Railroad did not go by land, they went by water. Water was faster. It's also safer. Not completely safe, but you're better off on water than trying to go from Virginia to Pennsylvania on foot. That's not going to work out for you. These men, you don't hear about them though, right? Because if there's a church that was a part of that network, you can go to the church and see it, and that's really cool. But those boats, those ferries, those little ships, they're gone. And they definitely didn't keep passenger records for obvious reasons. The other reason why you don't hear about these Black men is, frankly, white scholar-centered white people. People like Wilbur Siebert, who wrote about the Underground Railroad. He focuses on white people in the network, and they are due their praise, right? But other people follow that. But most scholarship will tell you, like, no, really, Black men. And by the way, what were these Black men called? Blackjacks. So if you want more history like this, check out my course, Race Critical. Go to racecritical.com. American history is way bigger and way deeper than anything you were taught in school.
All right. So the reason I played that is because, oh, damn it. Let me stop this thing. All right. The reason I play that is because there are whole areas of the field of Africana studies that have been feminized to the degree where they're not to be questioned, right? So to a lot of people, the Underground Railroad is Harriet Tubman. That's pretty much the discussion, right? Mm-hmm. For me, when I ran into this issue, it wasn't the Underground Railroad where I ran into it. It was slavery in regard to sexual violation. Mm-hmm. Whenever we talked about slavery in regard to sexual violation, that was the sole property of women and girls.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it wasn't until grad school before I found out sexually what had been happening to Black men. Mm-hmm. And then later I ran into Tommy and learned a little bit more. So essentially, with Black men were the only group that were sexually violated by white women and white men, because white women would threaten you with mob violence, proxy violence. And of course, white men would dominate you at their will sexually if they could. Mm-hmm. Nobody had said that across 3 degrees in Africana studies until I was in my doctorate, because it wasn't supposed to be talked about. And I'm saying that to say so this feminization that we're seeing taking place in terms of the bodies in the room, the speech, the conferences, the hiring. It's also taking place in terms of what you're allowed to talk about in regard to given subjects. And there were certain subjects that were deemed solely the space, the auspice, it was under the auspices of women and could not be touched. So he gives the example with the Underground Railroad, but I just was using that as an example. But there were other areas, and I'm fine. And so you have to almost decolonize the field on gendered grounds because of what we've been introduced to and what we're allowed to talk about. And that's reinforced by the conferences, which is where the professors will come back to their universities and reinforce even more what they brought back from the conference, which is usually filtered through a Black feminist lens. So in as much as I'm seeing grad students alienated from their programs if they don't follow the line that they're supposed to follow, the subject matter has been gendered as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what has to happen is kind of like, going back what I was saying earlier, if you look at African scholars, especially since the 1980s, African scholars have had to go back and basically, decolonize, writing about Africa. You know what I mean? Because so much of what was written about Africa was written from a white perspective, and it was written from a Eurocentric, a missionary perspective and what have you. And they had to go back and go through it. I mean, and so that's basically, what you're talking about, and it's a weird, strange, bizarre type of thing that we're talking about right now. You know what I mean? Because the perspectives of these people are just they're so limited, so narrow, and what have you. It's kind of like, you can't get around the fact that yes, when you look at the history of institution building with Black people, it was primarily led by men. You look at the history of the Black church, you look at Booker T. Washington, you look at the Garvey movement, you look at Black business, you look at all these sorts of things. And it's not to say that women were not involved and what have you, you understand? But we have a history of men. That's just, it is what it is. Kind of like, the Black Panther Party, they've worked so hard to revise that history over the decades and what have you. And it's like, the Black Panther Party was founded by Black men, okay? Huey B. Newton, Bobby Hutton, Bobby Steele, and what have you, they founded it. It wasn't founded by women, you understand? And the people who took the most risk were the men, you understand? And even, moving forward, even if you consider popular culture, man, you look at hip hop and what have you, hip hop is a male-oriented enterprise, you understand? And driven capital in terms of the hip hop business people, the artists, at every level, you understand. It's only been in recent years that we've seen a shift, and that was it's been a deliberate social engineered shift away from Black masculinity to women and other stuff. You know what I mean?
You talking about in hip hop?
Yeah, in hip hop, you know what I mean, in terms of from Nicki Minaj on up, you know what I mean, and Love and Hip Hop and all this stuff up to Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion and all that kind of stuff. That's a part of a deliberate social engineering program in the entertainment industry. We want to move this culture away from so-called hyper-masculine Black men, and we want to insert these women into the whole program and turn this into a woman thing. And so, yeah, man, this program of denial and erasure is very real. And as I said, this is not academic. And again, because you're not dealing with principles of reason and logic, scientific method, history, and all that kind of stuff. You're dealing with mythology, and you're dealing with stuff that's unverified. It's like, and Tommy has said this in this whole work, man. When you look at their efforts, feminist efforts at historiography and stuff like that, it's revisionist stuff. You understand? And I got a book right here, called a Black Woman's History of the United States. They have a whole series, on Howard Zinn. He was the first one back in the 80s. He wrote a People's History of the United States. And a part of that series, you have an Indigenous People's History of the United States. And here's the key thing. Most of the the volume coming out of that series has to do with people, entire populations. So you have a book that's called A Black Woman's History of the United States. This is the only book in the series that is gender specific. You understand? And it is reflective of this ideological program that they have. You can't understand. I don't. Yeah, I get the idea that you want to retrieve women's place in history, and there's nothing wrong with that. You understand what I'm saying? But you can't. There's certain things that you simply cannot ignore. In history, where men were major, contributors. You understand? And so that's why I said this is a cult, and this is part of the reason why. This is the part of the reason why, the right wing is attacking it. You understand? That
leaves Black men in an interesting crossfire, right? Because the right is trying to attack it. The left is using Black women to co-opt it, and I'm gonna show you that in a minute. And so Black men find themselves in a crossfire, and even receiving some Cold War attacks from Black women in this regard. So you're dealing with the white right, the white left, and the Black left in regard to women, and nobody. And as all of this is happening, nobody's saying anything about it out loud. You're just dodging bullets and don't even know where they're coming from. Now, I want to say, if you haven't checked this out, go ahead and look up Black Studies, Not Morality. This is a piece by Tommy Curry. Anti-Black racism, neoliberal co-optation, and the challenges to Black studies under intersectional axioms. This paper knocked me on my ass. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead and pick it up, and go from there. This is a powerful piece that will definitely help you understand more about what we're talking about. But the other thing I wanted to share is something that Dr. Neal is also very familiar with, I'm pretty sure. Let me see if it'll let me do okay, here we go. All right. So this is basically a breakdown on the percentage of faculty by rank, race, and ethnicity. This is 2022. And if you're looking at all the color lines, Black folk are the orange. So you can see we're a fairly low population amongst instructors, lecturers, assistant professors, associate professors, and full professors. It reads, Black men account for approximately 2 to 3% of a full-time tenure track professors in the U.S. colleges and universities, while Black faculty generally represent about 6 to 7% of total higher education faculty. The representation decreases at higher ranks, with Black men particularly underrepresented among full professors compared to their share of the population. But you can also kind of see, if we're 2 to 3% as Black males, and in total, we're 6 to 7%. You can deduce from there what the rest of that is in regard to Black women, right? Now, that's a small population, right? So if we're 2 to 3%, that means that they're 4 to 4. It's about 4%. My point here, though, is that doesn't sound like much, but if you're subsidized by the white left, most particularly white women, it changes the dynamic to where that 2 versus 4% becomes something different entirely. And what you end up with is this process of feminization that nobody says aloud, right? This is what you end up with. And so that's kind of one of the things that we're dealing with when we're talking about this subject. It comes at you in so many different ways, and that's kind of what I'm trying to, in a sense, almost archive in a way. I'm just taking snapshots of how feminization is surrounding you. It's almost like especially as a Black male, you just find yourself surrounded, but you don't understand by what. And you actually have to piece it apart and look at it on so many different levels before you really understand how you're being removed from the equation and nobody has said a word.
Absolutely. And, and there's the other factor is, there's the student factor. So, the institutions, are tilted towards female students. And so, you just imagine, you have an institution, let's just say not a single gender institution, but an institution like yours or whatever, or any other institution, and the majority of the faculty are female, and the majority of the students are female.
Yes.
Okay? And the students are socialized. They're socialized with the same gender preference. You understand? So they are socialized to identify mainly with female faculty, and socialized to study with them, that sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, if you are a Black male faculty person, under those conditions, yeah, you have to deal with those dynamics, man. You understand? I saw years ago, there's a guy, he's a literary person, his name is Mark Lila, he's a white guy, and he's written extensively about the university in terms of identity politics. And the one thing that he was saying about the problem with identity politics was that it was fracturing how we understand knowledge and reality and stuff like that. And you've talked about this. So if you have students, if you have Black female students who are conditioned only to be interested in knowledge that has a Black female orientation, they are being educated in a very narrow way. I mean, it's a very, very provincial mode of education. You understand? If all the courses, whether it's in Black studies or women's studies, and you're in the humanities and you're in social sciences, every course that you take, if you're in the social sciences, in the humanities, is coming at you from a female lens. You are being educated into a box. You understand? Yes. And I'll give you, and I've thought about this. I just give you a kind of an analogy. So just imagine an economics department. Think about this. Imagine an economics department. Let's say they have 10 faculty, and all of the professors in that department are Marxists.
Yes.
All of them.
Yes.
And they might be dealing with different aspects of Marxism, but everybody's a Marxist. And it's like you're being educated in a very narrow fashion because economics is much bigger than Marxism. You understand what I'm saying? And I would say the same thing if the economics department was just, filled with people who were doing some type of conservative classical economics.
To isolate it to one ideology is part and parcel of the problem, and to physically eliminate anyone that even offers an alternative perspective. This is where the crux of the problem comes in. But as Black men, I'm also talking about the outright elimination of not only Black men, but Black male thought. And I think the long-term implications of what you just described is something you're extremely familiar with. Tell me if you remember this.
About what's in this contract with Black America for women, and it's not, we're not mentioned at all in the contract with Black America. And I want to know,
I mean, when you mention Black people, you mentioning Black women, so don't count yourself out.
No, that's not true.
That's like administration say that when they
Black people is not Black women. Black women are not included in Black people.
No.
So you of all people remember that.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And what that does, it tells you this stuff trickles down. It has trickled down into the popular culture, and we see it. And people are talking this way, unknowingly, and maybe some, in ways knowingly, being influenced by these larger dynamics. You know what I mean? And to even add to that, you have to think about the professions, man. So you think about law, the profession of law. You think about the profession of social work. You think about the educational profession K through 12. If you think about all of the professions that women go into, okay, you know, they're coming out of these universities and colleges with this orientation, you know, and so that's it's a big thing, you know. In my book, I have a whole section in my book where I talk about what I call legal misandry, and I said that this is an issue, and this is before Helen Andrews. You know, Helen Andrews, when she did her thing on feminization. This was after my book was published, and I said basically the same thing in my book. I was like, because I was criticizing Paul Butler. Paul Butler is a law professor at Georgetown University. I was criticizing his work and everything, and his work was heavily influenced by radical feminism. And I was like, we have to look at law schools, and we have to look at how people who are being trained and educated in law schools, when it comes down to misandry, you understand? And this is jeopardizing, the rule of law. It jeopardizes due process. It jeopardizes the Constitution. All these things, and this is a thing that needs to be, attended to, and what have you. So essentially, all of the professions that the women go into are affected by this issue that we're talking about right now. You understand? Right. And yeah. And so this is no laughing matter, brother. This is a serious thing, because these perspectives are simply these are myopic perspectives. They're cultic. They go against long-standing principles of reason. And I would just say this, because I did a show last night, where I talked about hysteria and what's going on right now. And I talked about how irrational this whole enterprise is that we're dealing with. And I'm gonna say this, man, Eurocentrism, the Enlightenment, and all that kind of stuff, with all this racism, notwithstanding, these Enlightenment people did affirm and value rational and logical principles about, in terms of the scientific method and thinking and methodology and all that. I mean, the Constitution and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I mean, when I say that this stuff is not academic, yeah, I'm saying that there are principles that should be standard among scholars, that should be respected, regardless of whether you're black, white, male, female, gay, straight, or what have you. If you don't have uniform standards in terms of what it means to engage in intellectual activity, you have something else. You have a cult. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, like we're doing the whole empirical method. The empirical method is the method that comes out of the Enlightenment. You understand? And we talk about data, and because, in other words, we're dealing with mythology. We're dealing with gossip. We're dealing with superstition. We're dealing with hearsay. We're dealing with what mama said. We're dealing with biographies, and we're dealing with memoirs. We're dealing with stuff. I'm a religious scholar, and so in the world of religion, we don't pretend to be scientists in religion. You understand? But we do respect empiricism. You understand what I'm saying? And if you can't have an academic discipline that does not have any respect for a common universal way of approaching reality. You understand?
But I think what we're seeing now is, because this has been going on for decades. I mean, once you can identify it, you can see how long it's been happening. I remember this in the 80s. This process, kind of taking over, particularly Black education, but especially at the university level. This has been going on for decades now, but I think it has reached a certain level, right? And I think the level I'm talking about now is what you see with some cults, where they attempt to legitimize themselves and make their standards the norm. I think the attempt right now is to take this feminism, to take this anti-Black misandry, and to make it the norm in the field, to the degree where if you don't ride along with it, you're automatically ostracized and alienated. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. And even events like the tragic passing of the Fairfaxes and so on and so forth, even these kinds of events, as a matter of fact, especially these kind of events, are opportunities to shift public focus, even intra-racially, intra-communally in the Black community, to make sure it's reaffirmed that Black men are monsters, that we have to take to this feminist approach because, patriarchy is destructive and so on and so forth. And patriarchy just becomes, another label for men, right, and male. But I think these opportunities are being used to co-opt the main perspective and switching it out for this kind of feminist perspective that we're seeing. And you're only really given traction in your career if you go along with it, right? If you're able to follow the party line. But go ahead.
And I say it's a dead end. I'm saying at the end of the day, it's fundamentally a dead end, because it right now it's being delegitimized from other quarters, conservative quarters, and it will only grow in terms of its delegitimization, based on what I was saying before. You know what I mean? And let me just give you just an example. So you think about W.E.B. Du Bois, and you think about Du Bois, and you look at his work, his early work. I'm gonna include Black Reconstruction, but the Philadelphia Negro, it's all that kind of stuff. So Du Bois, if you think about it, so Du Bois is one of the pillars of modern sociology, right? And Du Bois, it's clear, Du Bois was trying to overcome racial mythology. And, here was the ironic thing. And so although the white world, the Enlightenment world had this thing about rationality and all this kind of stuff, racism was very irrational. You know what I mean? And Thomas Jefferson, on one hand, he can say that, based on Enlightenment principles, that slavery is wrong. It is not consistent with reason. You understand what I'm saying? But at the same time, he held slaves. He was a slave owner.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he was schizophrenic. So on one hand, he got all this Enlightenment reason stuff, but on the other hand, he's driven by all this mythological stuff about Black people. You understand? And so the thing about it is that Du Bois, coming along later and being one of the founders of sociology and all that kind of stuff, but sociology was, grounded in empiricism and all that kind of stuff, says, you know what, we have to overcome, we have to give real accounts of Black people in the world that are not plagued by mythology and stereotypes and all this kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? So that's why when you look at the Philadelphia Negro and all that kind of stuff, there's so much documentation, there's so much empiricism that is there. You understand what I'm saying? And so, he is the kind of the model. And what has happened is that with the stuff that we're talking about, we've gone back to this kind of pre-Enlightenment. It is backwards. It's very, very backwards, man, because basically, that's why I say this enterprise is anti-academic. And I've said this, Tommy say this and all this kind of stuff, and like, this is mythology. This is primitivism. You understand what I'm saying? And you can't call this academic if you are staunchly ideological and mythological and all that kind of stuff. It's going to lead to a dead end. You understand? And you can't. It is a cult. This is the nature of cult. I study religions. This is one of the facets of religions. You understand? And it's almost like in religion, there was a battle between Darwinism, evolutionary biology, and Christianity. You had people who wanted to believe that the biblical text, the Bible, was the word of God, and that the creation accounts were just how everything happened. And then Darwin comes along, and he had predecessors, and he was like, I have a totally different scientific account of who human beings are. You understand what I'm saying? And you have this clash between these fundamentalist Christians who believe that everything in the Bible happened the way it did and stuff like that, versus the evolutionists, who are like, okay, let's look at history and let's look at biology and all that kind of stuff. So thing is that and I want to say this, I'm gonna land my plane here, is that this shift, this gerrymandering of Black studies, this gentrification of Black studies towards women's studies, it is mimicking a very, very old problem, and it's going to lead. I think ultimately it would lead to its demise and delegitimization. And I'll say this last thing. I just saw there's a school that just announced it is going out of business. It's called Hampshire College. Okay. Hampshire College. Yeah, and one of these so-called progressive schools, majority female population, faculty had a female president and all that kind of stuff. They can't get any more students. And they're into all this non-binary stuff and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And they have to close their doors. They're not attracting students and stuff like that. And my assessment is that all of this extremism, in terms of ideology, is leading to the death of these institutions. No diversity in addition to what the right,
No diversity of thought.
No diversity of thought. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the part of it. There's no. And ironically, these are the people who are always talking about how important diversity is.
Right. But it's their diversity, and that only includes who they like and who they want to include, which often doesn't include Black men, But I will say, when I think about this, I guess there's one thing I want to definitely leave brothers with in this conversation on feminization, is that we also have to understand, as much as I appreciate Helen Andrews' work as far as bringing that to the center in a way, that's not Black feminization. That comes from its own line. I mean, I don't know if you want to trace that back to first wave feminism or so on and so forth. Yeah. But Black feminization for us starts on plantations. It goes back to Reconstruction. It's a different dynamic for us, because in as much as gender theory, particularly white gender theory, frames the relationship between white men and women, Black gender theory, especially as it relates to Black feminism and Black feminization, is patterned off of Black relationships with white folk. I mean, and I'm gonna show you what I mean in a minute. But that being said, our power dynamic in the Black community wasn't just rooted in gender, but also race. So that meant the gender dynamics of relating to white folk. So for Black men, there was always a confrontational bent with white men, right? Relationships with white men pretty much didn't go much further than that. Now, there were dynamics between Black men and women, but a lot of them were coerced. As far as Black men and white women, I should say, those were coerced relationships. But even if a white woman really dug you, there was really nothing she could do to advance you. White men, however, had the capacity to advance Black women within within the Black quarters of the plantation, so to speak. So our gender dynamics, as we look at where Black feminization comes from, doesn't just come out of a gender discourse between us and Black women. It's filtered also through the relationship with white power going back to slavery moving forward. And I'm going to tell you who reinforces this, and a lot of people don't think about it, is Martin Luther King. If you go back to where do we go from here, he says something that I think is key to this. And he's not overtly talking about feminization, but in a way he kind of is. I'm going to read this whole segment because we have some that just listen over the online radio. It says, because the institution of marriage had been illegal under slavery, and because of indiscriminate sex relations, often with their white masters, mothers could identify their children, but frequently not their children's fathers. Moreover, the women, being more generally in the house and charged with the care of the white master's children, were more often exposed to some education and a sense, though minimal, of personal worth. Hence, a matriarchy had early developed. Now, he's talking about what we call a gynocracy now, but he's talking about a matriarchy as supported, subsidized, and allowed by white men. That's fundamentally what he's talking about. And their proximity to white men is what subsidizes and gives infrastructure to this gynocracy, as we call it now. But he says, hence, a matriarchy has early developed. After slavery, it persisted because in the cities there was more employment for women than men. Though both were unskilled, the women could be used in domestic service at low wages. The women became the support of the household and the matriarchy was reinforced. The Negro male existed in a larger society dominated by men, but he was subordinated to women in his own society. The quest of the Negro male for employment was always frustrating. If he lacked skill, he was only occasionally wanted because such employment as he could find had little regularity and even less remuneration. If he had a skill, he also had his black skin, and discrimination locked doors against him. In the competition for scarce jobs, he was a loser because he was born that way. His rage and torment were frequently turned inward because if they gained outward expression, their consequences could be fatal. The Negro father became resigned to hopelessness, and he communicated this to his children. Some men, unable to contain the emotional storm, struck out at those who would be least likely to destroy them. They beat their wives and their children in order to protest social injustice, and the tragedy was that none of them understood why the violence exploded. Now, at the same time, what he doesn't cover is that the frustrations of black women, you could see extended to black children. So you could see where this pathology, if you want to frame it that way, goes. But the emphasis for me on how what he's framing in the first paragraph contributes to how we understand feminization is that it's predicated on the relationship between black women and the white family. And the difference, and this is something that Sedanius points out, the difference between how those relationships are negotiated by black men and black women. And that's often downplayed. So again, what I want to reinforce when we talk about this whole notion of feminization and we start to see how it affects us, keep in mind that it's filtered for the black community through relationships with the white community. And this is why we're talking about black women, gentrifying, colonizing, whichever term you want to use, the field of Africana studies. They're only able to do it to the extent that they've been authorized to do it, subsidized to do it. That the resources to do so didn't come from them. It didn't come because they woke up one morning and decided to do it. It came because they were allowed to do it. Now, we can talk about the same thing in the nonprofit industrial complex. We can talk about the same thing, and the same pattern you can see replicated in a variety of spaces. But this is something that is authorized. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is irrefutable history. You know what I mean? I mean, the fact, what you're pointing to, and as you were talking, as you were reading King, and as you were, elaborating, I was like Orlando Patterson. I was thinking about Orlando Patterson and his work, on slavery and stuff like that. And and one thing that he does, he had a book came out in the late '90s called Rituals of Blood.
Right.
And Orlando Patterson was trying to, and I used the book in my work. I repeatedly, and he was trying to, in the '90s, understand this gender issue among black people. And he just flatly goes back. He says, listen, and again, it echoes King, and he goes further, is that the black women have always had a very, very intimate relationship with the white household. Going back to slavery, and she was always an insider. So she's always been an insider. She took care of the children. She fed the family. She was incorporated. And what happened, it was after the 1970s, her role expanded, basically, because,
she was a chess piece.
Yeah. So before the 70s, her role was primarily, a domestic household worker and what have you. You know what I mean? And she was an insider. And then after the 70s, the role expanded. So, and that included her being incorporated into the professions, and into other spheres and everything like this. And I'll give you another person, Vernon Jordan. Vernon Jordan. Who was, boomer guy and all of that, worked with the Urban League for many, many years, a major player in corporate America and all that kind of stuff. And many people, when he was coming along, he was a lawyer. He went to Pepperdine from Atlanta, Georgia. And some people saw him as a precursor to Barack Obama. He has a memoir called Vernon Can Read. And he talks about, in the 50s, his mother worked for a super wealthy family in Atlanta. Okay. His daddy was a post office person. And his mother, working inside of the homes of rich white people, saw how white people were socializing their sons, right? And she made the effort to connect her son, Vernon Jordan, with the patriarch of that household. You know what I mean? And Vernon Jordan, when he was an undergraduate at Pepperdine, he found himself in the company of a very rich white man in Atlanta. This is, I mean, you talking about, when he, good old boy racist or whatever. And this rich white man was surprised that Vernon Jordan was a college student. And when he met him, and he was like, "Oh, you read?" I said, "I didn't know Negroes like you know how to read." You know what I mean? And that's why Vernon Jordan titled his book "Vernon Can Read," because these were the words that the white man was saying. So the white man discovered that this woman who had worked for him for so many years had a son who knew how to read. And he was so shocked and amazed that this young black male knew how to read, that when he was introduced, when the white man was introducing him to people in the household, he said, "This is Vernon." And guess what? Vernon can read. Okay. But I only invoke that story to say, and here's the thing, I invoke that story to point out the intimacies that was there. You understand what I'm saying? She was the insider. And Vernon Jordan talks about how his mother and father kind of clashed about where his future was headed. His father was a post office person. And he was a regular postal guy and what have you, working class black man. And coming out that world, you're a young man, my son, you can get you a job at the work. You can get you a job at a post office. You can, do some working class activity.
Right.
But the mother, do something practical. But the mother saw something different because she was working in the house of these white men. You understand what I'm saying? She was very different, just a very different type of woman. Okay. But the point is that she was an insider. You understand? And this has been an intimate type of enterprise that has gone on, as you say, going back to slavery. They were in the big house, and what we're dealing with right now is just simply a continuation of that at a variety of levels. White people are more comfortable with black. I told this to a friend of mine, and you know this already. Most of us know this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Yeah, they're more comfortable with black women than they are with us. Okay. They're more trusting of black women than they are with us. And there's so many dynamics that are there. You understand what I'm saying? And I even said in my work, it is so deep that they fetishize, white people fetishize black women. You understand? They are a major fetish of white people. all white people, whether they're liberal, conservative, or whatever. Now today, you know, things a little. The conservatives have are jumping ship right now. You understand? You know, up until recently, it was a consensus. You understand that this woman was fetishized, and that's why, you know, she had no problem getting employment from a conservative, getting employment from a liberal or a leftist. Doesn't matter. You understand what I'm saying? Because she's always been intimately connected to white society.
Mm-hmm. This is what King was saying, and this is what oh my goodness, I just said his name a moment ago. Anyway, yeah, this is so the patterns are replicating, and we're seeing it in the current moment in different contexts, and we just got to get to the core of what it is. But I think there are many Black men that are transitioning into different spaces, especially for work, especially trying to find security. And especially when you start talking about the trades, they're finding themselves associating with fewer and fewer women, and I think fewer and fewer Black women. So we're seeing this major split between men and women, and Black men and Black women, ideologically, politically, and even in terms of employment, in terms of work and work aspirations, the types of fields people are going into. Black men are transitioning into trades. And we're starting to see them transition out of environments like higher education in greater numbers. The only issue is that we don't really see a major push to get them back, you know, in any serious way, because I think people believe, particularly during this era of feminization, good riddance. Now the space is ours. That's what I think I'm kind of witnessing. And I think there will be blowback from that, but it will also fracture relationships that much more. But go ahead.
No, and it reflects the fact that we're bifurcated. You know, they're just
Thanks,
major
Discipline.
bifurcations.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Discipline. I was talking about Jim Sidanius and King. Shout out to Discipline for that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, we're bifurcated, and it's an irreversible situation. We live completely different lives. You understand? And you know, I don't think there are a lot of guys who are still trying to, you know, keep hope alive. They don't want to quite acknowledge it. You know what I mean? The male feminists don't want to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? The male gynocrats and what have you. And you know, and the romanticists. But we are split. We have a completely, our orientations are completely different. And and it's you know, and the polarization is not changing. You know, it's not decreasing. You understand? But the last thing I want to say is that I don't think that this is going to end well.
Real talk.
No, seriously.
Real
talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to, especially on their end, it's not going to end well. Because you're not going to be able to, you know, and Helen Andrews said this. She said, you know, once the profession becomes all female, it just collapses.
Yes,
and I think that, yeah, that's where they're going. If men are completely driven away, it's going to fall apart. Because they don't have the orientation, they don't have the life experience, real world engagement with maintaining institutions that men have. You understand?
But even on just a fundamental level, you can't build the community without men. You can't expand it. You can't keep the infrastructure in place. You cannot alienate men at every age. And we can talk about this from K through 12 to graduate school to hell, damn near seniors at this point. You cannot alienate men and then wonder why the community you advocate for, or at least you say you do, isn't expanding and building. But that's been the agenda for the longest, especially after the civil rights movement, right? Where you have this small community that has no business influencing the world doing so. But the agenda to dismantle the civil rights movement and replace it, first off, with the women's movement, and the co-opting of Black women, these things have still, they still have impact today. They're not disconnected from this process. And I agree with you. The fallout is inevitable at this point, and people still want to ignore it. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Because, one of the things that is evident is that, particularly in the current environment, is that the white liberal savior that has been fundamental to kind of sustaining this is no more. Joe Biden is the last one. Bill Clinton is an old man. The white liberal world is not going. We can go back to Lyndon Johnson. The white liberal world is not producing the type of figures, males in particular, that are going to alpha male. I was saying this to a friend of mine recently. You don't have these alpha male liberals who want to fight for women, who gonna put stuff on the line. You understand? And like the white male in Texas, James Tallarico, I don't know how much you followed what's going on in Texas and all that kind of stuff with Jasmine Crockett and everything like that. But the thing about it is that they have the cadre of men on that liberal side. They're not gonna be warriors. They're not gonna be liberal warriors. They just don't have it in them. And so then you have the shift to the right. You know what I mean? Where they're defunding everything. You know what I mean? And these people are coming. They're becoming more and more indifferent to all this stuff. We Black men are in a interesting situation because we've dealt with indifference our entire existence. Right. You know what I'm saying? We already know what it's like to be ignored. We know what it's like to be undermined. We've devised. We have 1,000,001 strategies of survival. In face of these type of challenges. You understand? Whereas the women, they've had all kinds of safety nets, and they've had chivalry, and they've had funding and everything like that. And that's why I say,
absolutely,
it's not. This stuff is not sustainable. It's kind of like you did the show on all these job losses, and we've heard all these reports about the job losses. You know what I mean? And there's still panic about women losing jobs. You know what I mean? Everything like that, and all these cuts. And right now we're seeing. I said this last night. We're seeing a lot of the female politicians. Many of them, they're taking big L's. There's a female politician just in Florida. She just resigned from Congress. Because she was under investigation for fraud, PPP fraud, you know what I mean? And, Jasmine Crockett fell off, and Kamala fell off, Stacey Abrams fell off, Fannie Lewis fell off, Fannie Willis fell off. All these women, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
I did a whole show in spring of 2025 where there were about 13 of them in a row that were all being eliminated. And
the thing is that, okay, you've told us that you're superior to white people. You've told us that you're superior to Black men.
Right.
Everybody is mediocre in relationship to you. Okay. If you are the superwoman that you say you are, then you should have no problem creating an economy for yourself. You know what I'm saying? With all these ladies. With all this education and stuff like that, and talent and experience, stuff like that. But the reality is that is just a smokescreen. That's something that they tell the world and they tell themselves. They don't have the infrastructure in place. They have been completely dependent upon white saviors up to this point. You
Yes.
understand what I'm saying? And
Yes.
it's like it's a welfare type of dependence. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And it's like, again, Black women studies, it exists because it is dependent on this power structure, this white
Mm-hmm.
liberal power structure. And at any minute, the white liberal power structure, if it's threatened by other forces, it says, you know what, we're not gonna do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna just move on or what have you. Or what happens is that it can just die, it can fade off due to natural causes, like the school I mentioned before. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's just it becomes no longer viable because of the cultic stuff that's going on. And it's
Right.
like, this is ridiculous. You're talking mythological stuff and I can't do anything with it. It doesn't help clarify what's going on in the Black world. And that's the big thing, man. This stuff, the problem with Black studies right now, or what is now women's studies, it doesn't clarify anything about our situation. It doesn't
No.
illuminate stuff. We see
Well,
this, we see it now.
and it wasn't meant to. It was meant to advance them. It was meant to advance one demographic over Black men. It was sold as liberatory,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really a political advancement on their behalf. And to your point, the reason I'm playing this video, even though it's without sound, when you said that they're going to have to organize and try and secure something and create something, this is what they're trying to do. Even though the subsidization that they're used to has been drastically diminishing. But there have been a number of these kinds of leadership summits, one in Chicago, one at UCLA, and you have mostly highly educated Black women coming together, very few Black men, if any. And they're trying to go about doing this now. But one of the biggest issues is they're having to do it without the typical liberal support that they're used to. In this particular video, one woman claims that they have 75 million votes that need to be used to manipulate the Democratic Party to operate on their behalf. This is the woman right here. She's talking about 75 million votes. She's talking about Black women's votes in alignment with a number of other women in that way. It's the same, groups that we've been talking about for years. The problem is white women keep jumping ship. Because white women have been instrumental in putting Trump in office a couple of times already. So in as much as they're trying to claim this alliance with women across race, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so they're in the process of trying to, reform the gynocracy, trying to, reestablish it, put it up. You see, the only brother there is walking through there with a pink suit. But anyway, that aside, this is where we are.
And you look at it, much of it, this is performance. This is marketing.
Yes.
This is performance. This is marketing. This is, chest pounding, that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? This is just, this is superficial stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it's presented as, progressive and empowering and stuff like that. But there's no, there's no foundation. You understand? Right. And I will say this. I mean. And I was thinking about this. There are two things. One thing is I was thinking about this in light of this conversation and what's going on today. It hit me today that I am not, as a scholar, stuff that we do, I am not aware of one Black woman who is an expert I'm talking about a real expert on DV or IPV, who is a real expert on the stuff that we write about, stuff that you and Tommy write about. I have yet. I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I'm not aware. Maybe you are. I don't know. But I only lift that up to talk about the problem that you have here. So, this situation right here with these, these unalivings and stuff like that, the responses, the bulk of the responses are kind of typical and emotional and stuff like that. But I can't go into Black women's studies and find people who actually can give an account of what is actually happening with Black people. You understand what I'm saying? And you know, they you know, the experts. So that was
right.
one thing. Yeah. So yeah. The one thing that was the other thing. Oh my God, my mind is all over the place. The other thing that I wanted to other thing I wanted to say is that there is no group in history that we know of, particularly in recent history, that has been oriented this way, led by a single gender, female in particular. The Latinos, I'm just going to say this, the Latinos are in position right now to be our masters. You know what I'm saying? The Latino population, Spanish people, Spanish-speaking people, Mexicans, people from Venezuela, Cuba, all that stuff, et cetera, they still, and their household stuff, you know, is not perfect or what have you, but they're in position. That's why white people are so anxious about them. You know what I mean? Because they outnumber us. You understand?
Right.
They outnumber us, and they still have cooperation. You understand? And then after Latinos, you.
Oh, I was just going to say that the left has been courting new mascots. Right? Black women have been mascots for a long time. They're courting Latinos, they're courting LGBT, but the question is, you know, will they replace Black women as their primary mascots? You remember when Black women were being presented by the Democrats as the mothers of the movement. So the question is, will they replace them at this point? So, you know, but go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, and both for the right and the left are competing equally for the Latinos. You understand? And then you've got the Asians. You understand? You've got South Asians, you got the Chinese, you got the East Asians and South Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, or whatever, Indian, Pakistani, and all that kind of stuff. You know, who, you know, they don't have the numbers that we have, but they are enmeshed in the white infrastructure in the world. You understand what I'm saying? And you know, they've become significant players, and they're players because they are still working as a dyad, as a cooperative, men and women and what have you. The Black population is the only population in America, and probably you know, in the history of the modern world, I would just say in the modern world, this stuff, and I said this not so long ago, I was on Dr. L's channel. Our situation is very, very unique in the world. Because this is not happening. Maybe South Africans are almost close to us, but they still represent a majority in South Africa. But outside of South Africa, the type of bifurcation that we live through is unique to the United States. And it's unique to history. And this is something that there's no precedent for this. There's no, you can't point to, they can talk about mythological African matriarchies all they want, okay? But we're talking about a modern, advanced, technological society that is the United States. Honestly, I don't see it. I don't see how they're going to be a competitive group without men. They're not going to be competitive without men alone. They're not going to be competitive without some type of subsidizer.
You know what I think what happened, especially when you get to the 1960s and 70s, I think white women and Black women, for that matter, decided to hijack the dating and mating space. And I think what they did is they decided that men would need to accept their definition of the new woman with the new gender roles. They broke the contract, as you're famous for saying. But what they also did is they presented us with a new definition of womanhood, void of our input, and just decided that we would just have to accept it. This is the independent modern woman. But the problem was they thought because we didn't have anywhere else to go as far as they knew, we would be forced to accept it. What you find is that men are finding all kinds of ways to adapt that range from monkhood to international travel, and there are plenty of things in between. And I think this is starting to really scare a number of these women who really thought that they could reframe society based on their new definition of themselves. But it's shattering. Things are falling apart because the men are not cooperating. The men are starting to break camp and move in different directions. And as simplistic as that sounds, it's still fundamentally damaging to the society as a whole. We've just breached not too long ago, right? The what is it? The reproductive rate necessary to sustain society. That's a product of this decision. That's a product of this hijacking. And that's really how I frame the 60s and 70s in regard to gender. It was a hijacking, and they decided we're going to redefine womanhood and men will just have to accept it. They did not expect men to reject it and to walk away. And that's what's happening right now, more and more. And liberal white women are starting to see this, most particularly with their sons. And it is scaring the shit out of them. I did a show on it last year about this. They are terrified about their sons withdrawing. Right. This is what what's his name? Galloway and them are starting to talk about, young white men on the left in particular who are checking out. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, and absolutely. They did not anticipate it. And and this is new ground, man. We're in new territory. And what I want to say is that, it goes to show you how wrong-headed this enterprise is. And you said before, with women's studies, there's an assumption is that, okay, everything that, has, that needs to be said about Black men has already been said.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Yeah.
They're static. These men are just static.
Yep.
You understand?
As one woman told me, just go watch what's the film in the early 90s with Ice Cube? I'm blanking on it. Damn it. Boys in the Hood. That's it. Yeah. She said, you don't need to do anything else. Just go watch Boys in the Hood. That's everything you need to know about Black men. But anyway, go ahead.
No, and you can imagine you're talking about a disorienting reality for many of them who assumed that we were static.
Yeah.
And they're seeing that we're not, that we're adaptive, we're organic, and we're venturing in different ways, where men are being indifferent, and all sorts of things are happening. Stuff that they could not even anticipate, and further, they don't even have the sensibilities to understand what's going on.
Right.
And even the curiosity, and that's what's sad about it. Even the curiosity to investigate and try to make sense out of things, because they're so beholden to this fixed view of things. It's just a very fixed view of things, and that's part of the cult, man. With the cult, things are fixed. Things are sealed off. There's system. There's the world is closed, and it's you have a final interpretation. There's a last chapter, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, no, and I'm gonna use my language. I say no. There's no last chapter. I said this saga is continuing. You understand? This thing isn't. This thing isn't end. It hasn't ended. This isn't the end of the series. I said no. We are at the dawn of a whole new epoch. You understand? And no one knows what's in front of us. You understand? And I feel, we're Gen Xers, man, and I'm looking at this, and it's a thing that I've had to grapple with. You know what I mean? Because it's like, 30 years ago, I could never imagine, being here. You know what I mean? And looking and living in the world that we are living in right now with so many windows. You understand? And I never thought like the bifurcation and accepting the bifurcation as it is, you know, passport broing and you know, seeing the world and all that kind of stuff, and you know, getting rid of old orientations. You know, I didn't see that 30 years ago. You know what I mean?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, so it's a, you know,
I mean, hell,
for those
if
of us
anything, Black women took to passporting, you know, first. I mean, outside of military and whatnot, but in the mid '90s, you remember that whole time period of trying to go get young Jamaican men in the mid '90s. How Stella got her groove back. They had a whole movement around it. So you know, it took a while, but it wasn't a problem until Black men started to do it. Now it's a problem.
And I said this, like, we were socialized to care. And you know, I'm still human. I'm still a human being. I still care about humanity and what have you. But you know, I'm mature enough to recognize that humans have to crash and burn. They have to, you know, deal with difficulty and stuff like that, and you can't stand in the way or try to save them from difficulty. You understand? And you know, the humans that we're talking about, they have to crash and burn. I said this on Dr. Thunder's channel a couple of weeks ago. I said, you know, they have to crash and burn and accept the fate that they've chosen for themselves. You understand? And we have no need to feel guilty. We should no longer be shamed. We should not feel any, you know, we should be decent human beings, of course. But not have this type of cosmic sense of obligation because we Black, that we have to rescue people. You understand? Or intervene.
Well, there needs to be an exchange of resources because that's what community has always been. And you can't decide arbitrarily in the 60s and 70s that we're just no longer going to extend resources to Black men. We're just going to expect it. Black men need to provide, they need to protect, they need to continue to do the 1950s traditional things that we've established. But as the new definition of womanhood, we're not going to reciprocate anything. They need to serve us. That's it. And you can't put that on the table and then be surprised when men decide to no longer cooperate. You know, they've selectively used traditionalism to serve their interests, but they've redefined it in a manner that is not reciprocal. And men have decided that it's not enough. So,
absolutely. But
I want to thank you for taking the time to do this because I know you got a crazy schedule. You know,
my pleasure, brother.
I'd like to know if you have any final thoughts on this that you want to share, because this is something that I think needs to be talked about more, and it needs to be talked about more too, because it's not just happening in Africana Studies. I've done other shows where I've shown where it's happening in different ways, but I do think we needed to plant this flag and make a statement, because there's so many men that I know in the field that see it and can't say anything, won't say anything. And we all act like it's not happening. And I'm sitting here looking at it like this shit been going on for a minute. Every conference I'm going to, it's fewer and fewer men, and nobody says anything. So I appreciate you being willing to break it down and being really the first to really frame it in a way that I think it needs to be framed. I really appreciate you doing that.
You know, and I'm glad that you know, you're doing this on the Onyx Report, and this is something, and it's funny, we didn't know that we needed to have this conversation.
No, but as usual, you blew up the spot, man. I was like, God damn, Ronald did it again. I need to get this brother over here.
we didn't know that this conversation had to be, put forward and everything like that. And it's long overdue. And because I was, when I responded on LinkedIn to these people, this woman in particular, it was like, oh my God, I was mad, frustrated. I'm like, this is ridiculous, and someone needs to say anything. Someone needs to say something about it, and people know where I teach and all that kind of stuff. And, people screenshot posts and all that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure it got around to other people. I don't care. And I'll do it again. You know what I mean? Because I'll do it again. I'll do it again. I'll say it in public because it needs to be said. And I'm not afraid of no feminists or womanists and all these people like that, and white liberal women. I'm not afraid of these people and everything. I respect them as human beings. But we're scholars. I'm an intellectual and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is nonsense. You understand? And I see the clear agenda, and it's tied to the larger stuff that we're talking about. And all I want to say is guys, Black men, we have to be bold, and daring, and just being honest about what is happening all around us, man. You know what I mean? And it's the silence. Is not a good thing. I'm glad that brothers, it brings my heart joy when I see brothers pushing back on stuff all over the internet. You know what I mean? Crazy stuff. And I think that this needs to be a practice, in our daily lives, and we have to deal with this because, like I said, this stuff has infected the professions, it's infected. It has infected the professions, and it's wrong-headed. It's like I said, it's not going to end well, and it's not good. It's not good for us as Black people. It's not good for society. You understand?
I want to share with you one last thing that's been gentrified. I think you'll feel this. Shout out to Do Good. He said, recently at my job, we celebrated the Black History Month, and it pretty much was led by Black women. We showcased the great work of Black folks in history, and 9 out of 10 Black folks displayed were women. Now, I've been saying this for a couple years, but using different language. What I've noticed is that Black History Month and Women's History Month in the Black, at least especially in the academy, has molded into Black women's 2-month period. So from February to April, it's a celebration of Black women across the board. And it's interesting to me how nobody seems to say anything about this. I've been showing people commercials. I've been showing it just been this slow removal of Black men. So when I say this is happening in multiple spaces, some of which sounds comedic, when you talk about Black History Month, this is what we're seeing. And again, nobody wants to say anything, but I'm like, it's time to be said. But
it's time to be said, and I think, and I will close with this. It's we have to name it as what it is. It's a cult. This is a cult.
Yes.
Hell, it's kind of like their cultish relationship to the Democratic Party. And you've seen it. You know how it is and how they talk about these Democrats and all that kind of stuff, and how they're so willing to put their bodies on the line for a party. It's like they are Democrat before they're anything else. You know what I'm saying? It's like the Democratic Party is like a freaking denomination. You know what I mean? And this is a cultic thing, and cults do not they don't have good. They don't end well. I'm gonna put it like this. They never cults never end well.
So we talk about what is it, cyanide in the Kool-Aid? It's about to go down.
They never end well. You know, and you know the other part of it. I'm in. So, the sisterhood has their own internal fractures, and this is going to be a part of the demise of the cult, because, you know, apart from kind of larger forces, the white world and what have you, they're going to fracture from within. We're seeing this when you see, you know, at a very popular cultural level, you know, when we're seeing across the internet. I said this last night on my platform, you know, these videos and these instances where these women are going at each other. You know, they're shooting each other, they're unaliving each other and all this kind of stuff. They can't get along amongst themselves. And that's tied to the impulsive nature of a lot of the stuff that they're invested in. You understand? The cultic stuff. So cults, here's the thing. Cults implode from within. You know, they implode from within, and they die due to external forces. It's both ends. So Jim Jones, I put it like that. I'm in. Jim Jones was hemorrhaging within his own cult before the Kool-Aid. Okay.
Right.
So there was a lot of stuff that was happening within the People's Temple before the Kool-Aid. You understand what I'm saying? Right. But you know, the Kool-Aid was just the icing on the cake. You know what I'm saying? But that's the nature of cults. Whenever you have something that is deeply irrational, it will never have a long history. It just won't.
Well, this I'll say this because we need to transition out. But the problem with this is it's not just damaging us in Africana studies or in the workplace. This is damaging families. This is damaging. I mean, it irreparably. I was talking to a brother of mine a couple months ago, and he was talking about how he found that not only himself, but so many more of his brothers that he socializes with cannot get along with family members because this feminism has gotten so deeply embedded that the relations between men and women and families has just dismantled, right? You know, the frustration, the contempt at any idea associating with manhood or patriarchy, even if it's not present, is the hostility has reached such epic proportions that men are reporting that it's just too much to deal with. We're not even just talking about, not to diminish it, but we're not talking about dating. We're not even talking about marriage. I'm talking about family, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, mothers, sons. It's dismantling families. And don't get me started on DNA testing and the lies about who belongs to who and who's this feminism has many different, like an octopus, many different arms. It is dismantling families, and the Black family has not been in a position to be invulnerable to being dismantled in very long time, if ever. So
I'm getting ready to see my family, in Florida at the end of May, man. I haven't seen them in a number of years. And I've shared this with you before, and other brothers, I grew up in a matriarchy. And so, mostly females, mostly female cousins, stuff like that. And, some of them follow me on Facebook and stuff like that. They know my politics, you know what I mean? And I've gone back and forth with one of my older cousins and stuff like that. And, I haven't seen them in a while, you know what I mean? So I'm bracing myself as I get ready to go down to Florida and see them. You know what I mean? I don't know what is going to happen. I'm hoping that I'm doing it, because they're my family. I ain't seen them in a long time. You know what I mean? And man, it's a real thing, bro. Yeah. These dynamics, man. But I know you got to go, man. I appreciate, man.
Man, thank you for coming through. Y'all need to go. If you have not subscribed to the brother's channel, please do so. BMI 3000 Reloaded. Give the good doctor your support. Spread the word. Definitely, if you see him jumping alive, pop in there. You know, I don't know if you're planning to do one soon, but I think you just did one last night, right?
Yeah, I did one last night on the hyenas. The call it hyena hysteria. I got a new term, so you brothers, it's called it's Black Man Derangement Syndrome. Damn. And yeah, so it's BMDS, Black Man Derangement Syndrome, and it helps you to understand all of the irrationality that is happening right now surrounding these unalivings with these men and everything like that, and we may have to talk about we'll talk about this another time, man. But something's going on in the culture, man, and I think that we're going to see more, incidences like this, and we're going to see more irrational responses, from the sisterhood and it's black man. It's like you got Trump derangement syndrome. This is Black Man Derangement Syndrome. Coming from hysteria, female hysteria. So anyway, man, it's been good, brother.
It's been good, man. I appreciate it. If you want to know more about the syndrome, check last night's show where he broke it down. Support the channel, as I said, so we can make sure the good doctor knows he's got backup. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna wish you well, brother. I'm gonna take you down and close out.
Okay.
And I'll holler at you soon, man. Peace.
Okay, we'll talk. Okay, take care.
All right, y'all. Appreciate the support as usual, especially for the replay game. Make sure you put your comments in the comment section. Let me know what your thoughts are, what your experiences are, what have you seen taking place, especially in regard to feminization, and how many different spaces are you seeing it in? Are you seeing it in the kind of work you do? If so, tell me about it. Let me know what kind of work you're doing. Let me know what's changing, because this stuff is happening organically. And as with most things, we don't really get an eagle's eye view on it for a good couple decades. So the way we can talk about the 70s now is very clear. But if you were alive during the 70s, you only saw bits and pieces of it. Same thing is still going on now. So we got to share information with each other so we know what it is we're talking about, what it is we're experiencing. Other than that, I appreciate y'all being here. I will holler at y'all soon. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.